Hello pool pals, it's your friends Matt and Rob, and today we're going to show you how to replace a shaft seal on an in-ground pool pump. Now Rob, why would we need to do that?
Well, there's a couple reasons. The most common would be when you replace a motor, you always want to make sure you replace that shaft seal. Otherwise, you're going to put an old shaft seal, water's going to run down the shaft, and you're going to ruin the new one.
Exactly.
Another reason is if your motor is leaking between the plate and the motor back here, it's the shaft seal's gone bad, and you need to replace it.
Also in the vent holes, a lot of times
Yep.
you'll see water coming out the vent holes. That's because the seal here is allowing water down through the shaft of the motor. Now, what tools are we going to be using to do this?
The tools that we'll be using, just a simple wrench, a socket wrench. You'll need a new shaft seal. Other items you might need, a strap wrench to remove the impeller, and then a rubber mallet maybe to knock the seal plate off.
All right, so as a disclaimer before we get too far ahead of ourselves, this is obviously going to be, it's not new, but it's mildly used. So things aren't going to stick like your pump that's been outside in the dirt and grime for about 5 years. So we'll show you some tips and tricks on how to get things off, but obviously we're not going to come across some of the hang-ups you might. Also, this is a workbench. You're going to be probably in 90-degree heat and hot in a very tight area. This is the best kind of a best case scenario. We understand that it might not follow your particular application, but just try to follow these steps as closely as possible and you should do fine.
Yeah, and obviously we're on a workbench here, so we don't have the electrical hooked up. If you do have the electrical hookup, you will have to work a little bit in the back of the motor, so it's a good idea to short out the capacitor ahead of time. So what you have to do is just, there's 2 screws you loosen back here. All right, so we've loosened up the 2 screws here, so we just slide the end cap off. You'll see that's the capacitor, and sometimes they can hold a charge, so it could give you a little zap. That's no good. So what you do is you just get a little flathead screwdriver, insulated screwdriver, and hold the metal across the 2 terminals to discharge it. So it'll just be like this. That way you don't you don't zap yourself.
All right, so what do we do next?
From there, that's discharged. So we're gonna go ahead and separate the motor from the pump body. This particular pump, this is a Pure Line Prime, but it's the same on most pumps, like a super pump. You have either 4 bolts, 6 bolts. You might have a metal clamp that holds the 2 sides together, or like on the Magnum, you have a ring that you loosen. But every pump will separate at this point. So we're just going to get a socket wrench and remove these bolts.
All right, so we got the 4 bolts that connect the seal plate into the main housing removed. Next is to remove the motor. Go ahead, Rob. All right. Now, obviously you can't do this in real life, but we're just going to move this bad boy to the side and kind of run us through what we're looking at here, Rob.
All right. Well, this is basically the diffuser. It's going to cover up the impeller, so we're going to go ahead and remove this diffuser. Some diffusers will have some screws to hold it in. This one doesn't, so it'll just pop off.
We're at a point where you can see in the middle of the impeller, this one looks like it has one of those crazy impeller screws, but it actually doesn't. Yours may. That's actually a reverse screw, so you're going to go righty-loosey instead of lefty-loosey to get those things on. But how do we get this impeller off if it's just one of those regular threaded on?
Well, you're going to have to stabilize the shaft from the back of the motor. All right, so this is the shaft that we have to stabilize in order to get the impeller off. And usually the access points are going to be up at the top where you can slide a wrench in there. This particular one's a 1/2 inch wrench, but sometimes you'll use a 7/16. So you just slide it in here and to stabilize it.
All right, and then we'll spin this around.
Okay, so we've got it stabilized, the shaft stabilized from the back, and then we're going to spin the impeller off counterclockwise. This one obviously isn't going to be that hard because it's a slightly used pump.
Yeah.
If you can't get it off by hand, you can use a strap wrench like this, and you just wrap the rubber around there, and then you're able to turn it, get more tension on it. But this one shouldn't be too hard. All right, we got the impeller off. Now what we need to do is remove the seal plate. And this one, again, this one will just pop right off. Sometimes they get stuck. You can pry it off with a flathead screwdriver. Or you might have to bang it out with a rubber mallet. This one we didn't have to, so that's good.
Lucky day.
All right, so we have the, you can see the two parts of the shaft seal here. The ceramic part is pressed into the seal plate, and the spring portion is slipped onto the shaft of the impeller. This is what prevents the water from running down the shaft.
The shaft seal we're showing here is a common one found in like the Hayward Super pump and the Hayward Super 2. Another common one we have is the one that goes into the Pentair Whisper Flow or the Pentair Superflow or IntelliFlow. You see this little copper cup. This would go on the seal plate. This would go on the impeller side. So just make sure when you're taking apart your pump that you are kind of keeping note of which side goes where. So what are we going to do next, Rob?
Next, we're just going to pop the old shaft seal out of the seal plate and impeller.
All right.
So the spring portion just should pull right off. Sometimes it's real common on the sewer pump impellers, when you pull this spring portion off, the center part of this shaft seal will stay on the shaft of the impeller. So you want to make sure you get that metal piece off.
Yeah, it's just gonna look like a little sheath, and it'll be kind of a telltale thing is it'll have two crimps right here, and that's a part of the old shaft seal. So if you're trying to put on the new shaft seal and it's not fitting, that's the reason. Make sure it's nice smooth metal.
The other piece of the shaft seal is this white ceramic piece, and usually you can just pull that out with your finger, or you can tap it out from the backside with a flathead screwdriver. Also, sometimes, you know, this white piece will come out, but the rubber won't, so just make sure you remove the rubber from the seal plate as well. Okay, so we've got the old shaft seal out. We're going to go ahead and, before we put the new one in, we're going to clean out the seal plate and the shaft of the impeller, just to make sure there's no debris or dirt in there. So just get an old rag and wipe it out.
And if you're ever not sure about which shaft seal to use, never hesitate to visit inyopools.com or give us a call at 407-834-2200. And we can almost always, I'll say 99.9999% of the time, we can figure out what pump you have and we can get the right shaft seal for it. So it looks like it's spick and span right there.
I think it's ready to go.
All right.
All right, we're going to go ahead and press this white ceramic piece into the seal plate. You can use a water-based lubricant if you need to press this in, because sometimes it's a little hard, or you can use a little bit of water. You just don't want to use like silicone or Teflon. That's not needed. And also, when you put this in, you don't want to touch the white ceramic. You want to get like a clean cloth and press it in. So we got our white cloth here.
Yeah, the finger oils can degrade it
Yep.
over time, and then you'll have another leak.
And here we go.
Well,
Make
snug
sure
as a
it's all
bug.
pressed in there flush. All right, so then we're going to get the spring portion. And again, you want this black smooth side to be pressing the white ceramic. So we're going to go with the opposite side and press that onto the shaft of the impeller. So get it started. Get our rag and twist it on. There. All right, so we've got the shaft seal installed on these parts. And now what we're going to do is start to reassemble the pump. So we'll first take the seal plate and pop it back on here. All right, then we're going to go ahead and, again, we're going to stabilize the shaft from the back with that wrench. Then you take the impeller, thread it on clockwise here.
Now, this is one style of impeller that you may have, but something you might see on something like the Super 2 is this wear ring. Not all pumps have it, so we do get phone calls from people who are saying, I think I lost my wear ring, and yet, what do you have? You have a Hayward Super Pump? You don't have it, so don't worry. But let's say if you have a Hayward Super 2, just be mindful when you take it apart that you do have, whether or not you do have this part. So it just slides on, the lipped portion faces out, and then you would screw it on.
Okay, so we're tightening it down, and you don't have to really crank it on. You just tighten it enough to where it starts to move the wrench in the back. You don't really have to crank it on, that's it. All right, so after the impeller's on, go ahead and put the diffuser back on. So just align that properly. Press it on. At this point, if you're replacing the housing gasket, diffuser gasket, this is when you'd slide those on and lubricate those with a silicone or Teflon lubricant. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and slide the motor back into the pump housing. There we go. At this point, we're going to put the cover on. For you putting your electrical wires back in, you would obviously do that first.
Yeah.
And slip this on, and then we'll tighten the 2 screws.
Well, that just about does it for our chassis installation. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below, or if you just want to speak to one of us, contact us at inyopools.com. Thank you for joining us. Bye.